This is Marc Ponzio for the Brooklyn Crokinole Club. I'll be doing our commentary on the most recent match between Marc and David on 10-7-23. This is a semifinals match. You're going to see Marc shooting the red discs and David on the right shooting the blue discs. Marc leads us off and goes a little long on his 20. David answers back, taking his time and setting up a beautiful follow-through 20 there. Marc comes back with the 20 there, scores 1-1. David answers back in kind. Marc overshoots, and now he's definitely at a slight disadvantage here because David has the hammer and the extra 20. It's still early in the round, but we're getting there. David loses his shooter. Marc pulls off a 20, tying the 20's cup. With that 20, David managed to hold on to his advantage of hammer and 20s. So it's even in the 20 count, but David has the extra shot. So Marc still has to make something happen if he wants to either win or tie this round. David goes a little short there. This is an opportunity for Marc to step in and get ahead. Marc gets the clear, and he does pull it back a little bit, although it's in a position where David might be able to get that little touch 20 there. And he nails it. Marc's behind a 20 with only 2 shots to go. He does manage the 20, which helps. But he's only got one piece on, and that's not a strong enough position to win generally. We'll see what happens here. David just does a clear and sticks on his side of the board. A very conservative, good move. Marc does manage a good position there. He's posted up on the peg pretty nicely. It's not ideal, but it's not bad. Let's see what happens here. David gets the clear, but has to put too much force on it, so he loses his piece, and we end up tying the round 1-1 there. Moving into the second round, David's going to lead us off. And he goes real short. The opposite of a Super Steve there. Marc pulls his first 20 off. David turns around and answers in kind. We're in exactly the opposite situation where Marc's a little bit advantage because of the hammer, although he leaves a nasty hanger there. So David should be able to pluck that off and get himself an extra 20. But he goes a little bit wide and ends up just bouncing around inside the house. Marc answers back with a nice clear and a 20. Now they're just trading shots on the outside of the house. David realizes he needs to peel because that would just end up in Marc's favor with the hammer shot. Marc pulls out ahead again with another open 20. David tries to answer with the 20 but leaves a hanger. Marc couldn't quite convert the hanger but didn't end up in a terrible spot. There is perhaps a touch 20 open here, but he still has a 2-20 lead right now. David doesn't quite make the touch 20. He gets a bad bounce off of one of the pieces and ends up blocking himself. Marc does a clear. Now he's got pieces in the house and out of the house, spread out a little bit with a 2-20 advantage. David does manage a nice little touch 20, but it's just not going to be enough at this stage, and Marc wins with 20s and pieces on the board. Marc leads off the next round, hitting his first open 20. David's response is to fall a little bit short. Marc tries to clear but loses his shooter. David tries for the 20 but overshoots a little bit and it bounces back out. Marc tries to get the touch 20 with the clear, but ends up just bouncing out a little bit in the center hole. It's like a lip out. David falls to the side looking for the heavy hanger conversion, but doesn't quite get it. He does clear a piece, but he leaves himself far in enemy territory. Marc takes advantage of that shot and just leaves himself right up in his own territory. David does a nice clear right over the hole with a half-hole shot. And now it's back to a 20s race. Marc hits the 20 again. He's already 120 up. He doesn't have hammer, but otherwise he's in good position. David has to start sinking some 20s. He overshoots in that one. Marc clears. Unfortunately, loses his shooter, but I don't think it's going to make much difference at this point with the advantage Marc has. David finally manages to land an open 20. Marc goes a little long, but it's still not an easy spot to score for David. David clears and ends up on the side. Marc's just going to hang on to his advantage and leave a piece in the house in a sort of a semi-no man's land. David could do a follow-through, but it's not a real clean angle. And David does follow through, but ends up just not scoring enough points to make a difference. So Marc wins that round as well. It's currently 5-1 Marc to David. David leads. Goes a little short. Seems to be a recurring theme here for David in this match. Marc clears, but doesn't really do much with his piece. He leaves it in sort of a not so ideal position. David can get a touch 20 off of that. David's been punishing Marc all day with this particular shot, and he does it again. Marc does the Super Steve and just misses the house. David's checking his angles, looking to see if maybe he can clear from the outside. And he gets a nice little rebound clear off a peg. Marc thinks he'll do something similar. Bounces in, but again, puts David in a good position for another touch 20. And there it is. David claims another touch 20 where Marc doesn't have any 20s yet. He looked for a little touch 20 of his own, but didn't end up scoring it. David attempts to get a lot of action off those two pieces and maybe clear them both, but he only gets one out. Marc completely misses the touch off the edge of that piece there. David's going to clear the outside piece. Marc's going to try for a double and ends up losing his shooter, but he does get the two pieces off. At this point, he's pretty far under David's score with the 20s, so it's going to be almost impossible for him to pull it back. And David just puts a nail in the coffin there. There's no way Marc can get it back. He can't get 3 20s with two pieces. So essentially this round has gone to David already. And Marc just takes the last shot. Gets a 20, but it's inconsequential. All right, starting up the next round, Marc starts. He leads with an open 20 on his first shot. Score is now 5-3 Marc. We're playing to 7, so theoretically one more match. I'm sorry, one more round. David comes a little short with his first shot.
You're looking at us. It's David and me, and then Mikhail and Jose.
Marc does a pretty safe clear and leaves himself dead center towards David's side, but in the house. David pulls off another beautiful follow-through, the second one of the game. Marc puts in another open 20, keeping his advantage strong. David adds an open 20 of his own, tying up the round. Marc keeps the pressure on.
It doesn't matter. You made it into the finals.
But I was always getting beat by my little brothers. Really? 3 little brothers.
David goes for the open 20, but overshoots a bit. Marc tries to clear and do a little follow-through, but it just doesn't quite get enough strength on it to push it all the way in. David clears, but ends up on Marc's side. Marc's just going to hide with the advantage he has and hope David loses his shot. And that's it right there. David misses his shot, giving Marc a chance to pull way out ahead if he can get an open 20, which he does. So now it's 4-2 in the 20s cup. Marc's got the advantage. He's just going to play to the outside of the house, and there's little David can do with his last shot. That'll be the game, 7-3 for Marc. Here's the highlights reel showing some of the best shots of the game. Starting with David's follow-throughs. There's one.
Same idea.
This should be the second one here. Gorgeous, beautiful follow-throughs.
It's the second time you've
Well executed, just right on the line. This was a takeout, clear conversion right there. We'd like to thank you for watching the Brooklyn Crokinole Club. We do have regular events monthly. Please see the links below if you'd like to see further content, if you'd like to join one of our events, or see some of our friendly clubs content as well. Thank you.